you've been going to some amazing award ceremonies, haven't you? And all over the globe, to red carpet events, and the show has taken you on all over the place, basically.
Completely surreal. I mean, I'd actually never been to America before I went to the Emmys, which is really odd. I should have just gone on holiday, but had never even been. And so, yeah, it's been, I mean, it's mad. All that stuff is mad. And as I say, we're really grateful for it. But it is surreal. And we are, there's an element, especially all the British cast, we're all sort of slightly rabbit in headlights when we go to those events. And we kind of can't believe it. And we're just sort of like celebrity spotting and trying to remain cool. But yeah, I mean, it's mad. It's mad. And we're, yeah, very grateful.
But given the success of the series, they're all looking at you and pointing at you.
Well, people were coming over and we were like, oh my God, it's, you know, but it's mad.
Who was the best person who you met?
Well, Lizzo was on our table when we were for season 2 of the Emmys. That was great because there was 2 empty seats, and we were like, "Who are they for?" Like, we were sat because we were sat quite near the front, and we were like, "Oh, I wonder who they're for." And then Lizzo was presenting an award as well as being up for an award, and then she came and joined the table after she presented, and it was mad, absolutely mad.
Did you see her set at Glastonbury yesterday?
No, I haven't caught up on Glastonbury yet because I was travelling up. So yeah, no, I've not seen it yet.
She was great. Catch it. It's on the iPlayer. It's really well worth watching.
And Elton John, I hear, was off the charts. So yeah.
So you're taking Mr. Swallow out into to the audience.
Yeah.
What's next? If there's no Ted Lasso, if there's no spin-off, what's next?
No idea. No.
Oh, brilliant.
No, I've just finished doing a series for Disney Plus called Renegade Now, which Sally Wainwright wrote, which is, I went to a screening of episodes 1 and 2, and it's so good. It's unlike anything else she's done before. There's sort of like a fantasy element to it, like a supernatural quality to it, and a real swashbuckling adventure led by Louisa Harlan from Derry Girls, who's amazing in it.
That's Happy Valley's Sally Wainwright.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh. Yeah, and so, oh God, Sally's incredible. So I think that's not out till the start of next year, but so that's due out. And then I'm doing lots of writing. I'd love to do a Mr. Swallow sitcom at some point, so I'm trying to tinker away at that. And yeah, you know, just doing lots of live stuff and writing new shows. And so yeah, maybe more intelligence. Who knows? But yeah, that'll be fun.
Nick, lovely to have you here. I love the fact that you've seen Carol's weather forecast.
I know. I mean, I did feel a little bit underdressed, to be fair, but
it's right.
It is warm outside.
Perfect. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me again. Thank you.
And Nick's comedy show, The Very Best and Worst of Mr. Swallow, is at the Duke of York's Theatre in London in September.
You're watching BBC Breakfast. The time is 8:59.
BBC Radio 5 Live.
The voice of the UK.
Nicky Campbell. Listen on BBC Sounds and watch on iPlayer.
Very good morning. Welcome to the Nation's Phone-In. Hope you had a good weekend. Well, it was a weekend that shook the world. Our question this morning at Putin, is it the beginning of the end? Your thoughts, please. And it's not just about Putin and Prigozhin, one brutal autocrat and a fascist mercenary leader. It's about energy prices, cost of living. It's about your mortgage. It's about your shopping basket. It's about all our futures. It's about Moscow, but it's about your town too. As for deposing Putin, maybe we should be careful what we wish for. We're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Who knows? In terms of ruthless murdering tyrants, I think on this occasion many people are saying our enemy's enemy is our enemy. Look what's going on here. Let's do it. Let's think about what may happen, what this will mean for the war in Ukraine as well. We've got Putinologists, war experts, economic experts. We've got you. And get in touch. This is unprecedented stuff, which is important for all of us. There's no such thing as a stupid question. That's always been my watchword. 08085 909 693 85058. Get in touch.
This is BBC Radio 5 Live.
Call free 08085 909 693. Text 85058. Text will be charged at your standard message rate. Visit bbc.co.uk/5live terms for our terms of use.
And here is the news this Monday morning from Karishma Patel.
Thank you, Nicky. A BBC investigation has led to the identification of a new suspect in the Stephen Lawrence murder case. He's been publicly named for the first time as Matthew White, who died 2 years ago. The investigation found the Met Police seriously mishandled key evidence relating to him. Scotland Yard has apologised for how it handled the case. Russia's defence minister has appeared in public for the first time since the uprising by Wagner mercenaries. Sergei Shoigu has been pictured in state media visiting troops on the front line in Ukraine. Wagner's leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, had demanded his removal when he ordered troops to advance on Moscow. A woman whose husband and son died in a submersible which imploded in the Atlantic says she was supposed to be on board. Christine Darwood gave her place on what was meant to be a tour of the Titanic wreck to her 19-year-old son, Suleiman. And a study has found that people in the UK are less likely to survive treatable conditions like breast cancer and stroke than those in other rich countries. The review by the King's Fund think tank said the problem might be directly linked to NHS performance. The government says it's investing in services.
BBC Radio 5 Live.
The voice of the UK.
Listen on BBC Sounds and watch on iPlayer.
Yes, watching that text console very closely, do tell us what you think about the extraordinary events at the weekend, what you feel it may mean for all of us. It's central to all our futures, this 08085 909 693, our number. If you get in touch by text, tell us where you're from and put your name at the end of the text. Let's hear from Ukrainians, from Russians, from Brits. And we've got Anthony Beaver, leading historian on Russia, author of Russia, Revolution and Civil War. Anthony, good morning.
Good morning, Nicky.
Hi, and Dr. Patricia Lewis, I'm delighted to say as well, Deputy Director at Chatham House. Hi, Patricia.
Hello.
Well, Patricia, what did you make of it?
Well, it was a roller coaster of events that in the end led to something that we're not quite sure what it means. So it's still yet to play out, I'd say. We don't know yet the role of Belarus. We do not yet know what will happen to all the Wagner fighters. And we do not know what steps President Putin will be taking this week to perhaps exact some revenge, because clearly Prigozhin was expecting some more support in Moscow. And this is my sense of it anyway, that he would have been expecting some support. He obviously got a lot of support from the Russian army on the way, but whatever was happening in Moscow, it wasn't happening for him.
Of course, President Putin doesn't like those who cross him. Prigozhin would be well advised to watch his back. Would I be right in saying that, Patricia?
Indeed, you would. I wouldn't drink any tea or stand near an open window if I were him.
Anthony Beaver, I mean, you wrote this book, Revolution and Civil War. I mean, are we heading towards that kind of situation? You know the phrase, so-and-so, he's to the right of Attila the Hun. Well, a lot of these people are to the right of Vladimir Putin, aren't they?
Well, they are indeed. I mean, whether Prigozhin, Patrushev, a whole lot of the people surrounding him are certainly not liberal in any sense of the term. What is intriguing is the way, of course, that Putin, to defend his position, has created so many different organizations because he believes in divide and rule. And interestingly, only about just over a week ago, I mean, one was starting to hear rumors that actually the reason why he was allowing Prigozhin to get away with so much was that actually secretly Prigozhin was going to be his enforcer. Well, that has proved to be rather untrue in the circumstances of what we've seen in the last dramatic 2 days. So it's impossible to predict the future, except to say that Putin, we are seeing, I think, perhaps the beginning of the end. And even though he's been in power now for ever since 2000, the year 2000, we are probably seeing the start of the end of his rule.
What about the psychological effect of all this on Vladimir Putin? Might his, well, it obviously will increase his already high-octane paranoia, but strengthen his resolve by that process as well?
Well, I think it's more dangerous at the moment. It's true because, shall we say, a cornered animal like Putin in this particular case is likely to be more dangerous and unpredictable, purely because they feel they've got nothing to lose, except perhaps a life in reasonable luxury in exile or whatever it might be that he's prepared for. But even so, no, he does not want to go out in this particular way. That's certainly true. So yes, things could be more dangerous.
And do you think, Patricia, that we are seeing cracks in this regime?
Yes, we are, definitely. I mean, I think, as Anthony has said, we have a situation in which we have a lot of fragmentation within the armed forces. That was clear from the whole sort of process of the March on Moscow. We're seeing a lot of debate at the moment in the academic circles, the think tank circles, if you can call them that, in Moscow, about the use of nuclear weapons and whether or not there should be a demonstration shot. We've seen the real threat of
wait a minute. Let's just can I just wind you back to that one, please?
Yeah, sure.
Whether there should be a demonstration shot. That's a bit of a demonstration shot on a Monday morning. Just okay. Let's take that one slowly, Patricia. Go on.
So about a week or more ago, just about sort of 10 days ago, this started to bubble up in the intelligentsia circles in Russia, calling again for the idea of thinking about using nuclear weapons. And the idea that was put forward was for there to be a demonstration shot, the use of a small, relatively speaking, still huge, I have to say, nuclear weapons explosion to demonstrate the reality of it, what could happen, etc., in a rural area perhaps, but just to show resolve. And also, this was the main point of it, to signal the seriousness of what Russia is trying to do in Ukraine and to tell all of the Western countries to back off supporting Ukraine. This was the idea. Now, I have to say that there were some supporters of that in these circles, in the academic circles, but there was also a lot of pushback on the lines of, are you bonkers? You've no idea where this will lead. Imagine X, Y, and Z, what will happen. So it was just a discussion, but it keeps on coming up. I think this is the worry that we have, that people keep on talking about this. They're obviously trying to induce fear in Western populations, which doesn't seem to be happening. But we have to factor in that possibility. I think it's improbable, but it's possible.
Now, given that it's kind of the devil and there's a good few other devils lurking on his right, are we better off with Putin?
Are you asking me that?
Charlotte, yeah, okay, Anthony, you take that one. Yeah, sorry, I was imprecise because I was kind of quivering as I asked the question inside.
Well, I don't blame you. It's quite a quiver to think about. I'm not quite as concerned about it, perhaps, as Patricia, purely because of the China angle. I mean, there's no way that President Xi Jinping would ever allow that. And in fact, we have to remember, of course, that Putin's position, having even been weakened just in the last 48 hours, has never been strong vis-a-vis China. And he knows perfectly well that he has to have that sort of backing and support. So from that point of view, I'm not quite so concerned, but it doesn't necessarily mean that even a so-called tactical nuclear explosion was automatically going to lead to Armageddon, because for the simple reason, the West knows the situation. The West knows that they might well fire a weapon like that. It will not necessarily lead to huge numbers of casualties. As Patricia rightly said, it will probably be in a fairly open area. But at the same time, it is a question of how does the West respond? And this has obviously been discussed in great detail. It could be done by knocking out the whole of the Black Sea Fleet or something like that to show that the West is serious as well. I think these things are fairly carefully calibrated, but at the same time, let's face it, there's always the great risk of major mistakes taking over. But the key element in this, I think you'll find, will be China.
Any questions you have? 08085 909 693. 85058. And in case you were immersed in Glastonbury over the weekend, I don't know, a few of you were, some incredible stuff there. What actually happened? Here's a text. Can you please start your program, a bit late, but we'll do it, by explaining what actually happened so you all know what you're talking about. Don't presume everybody understands. And that's a good text we have there, and it's a fair one. Luke Harding, Guardian journalist in Kiev. Hello, Luke. Can you hear me okay? Author of the book Invasion, Russia's Bloody War, Ukraine's Fight for Survival. Hi there, Luke.
Hi. Good morning.
Okay, let's... I'll throw this one to you. What happened over the weekend?
I think what happened was that Yevgeny Prigozhin, this great pretender, this great kind of blabbermouth, was afraid that he was losing influence and power, that his mercenary unit, Wagner, was being marginalized, that his guys were being forced to sign contracts with Russia's Minister of Defense, and he rolled the dice. I mean, he did this astonishing thing. He invaded Russia, effectively seized Rostov-on-Don, trundled, sent his guys towards Moscow, and then backed down after securing some kind of deal with Vladimir Putin. Now we don't know where Prigozhin is. We don't know the nature of this deal really beyond Prigozhin supposedly going off to Belarus. But I think what we do know is this was really a very dangerous moment for Putin. I mean, for now, he's still president. For now, the machinery of the state continues. But I agree with Anthony. I think there are grave questions about how long Putin can continue. And I do think we're, if this is a Shakespeare drama, we're into Act 5. And what I can tell you is there are going to be more bodies on the stage in the weeks and months to come.
Whose bodies?
Well, that we don't know, but I mean the question about how long Prigozhin can survive is an interesting one. I don't think that Putin and Prigozhin can coexist, actually, in the long term, because the longer that Prigozhin is there, the more he becomes a symbol of Putin's humiliation and failure. And you just have to look at some of the video footage that we saw in Rostov-on-Don on Saturday night when Prigozhin left. He was being cheered by ordinary Russians in the street. They were crying out, Wagner, Wagner. They were wanting selfies with him. I mean, there was something slightly rock star about it, that the kind of attention that Putin hasn't had for a long time, because he spent, well, I mean, he spends a lot of time in his bunker. He's very worried about his personal security. And I think Prigozhin is a threat to the regime, and I suspect they will be thinking of ways to get rid of him.
One more for you as well. I mean, there is a renewed sense of agitation among Russian hardliners, it would seem. I'm just seeing a quote from a former FSB, aka, I guess, KGB officer Igor Gurkin, also known as Strelkov, who helped coordinate pro-Russian militias in eastern Ukraine. He was at this meeting of the Club of Angry Patriots, and he gave a speech saying that Putin and other representatives of the elite do not demonstrate an understanding that the war must be fought to victory. Can you explain that, Luke? They don't think it's being conducted properly.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the big ironies, Nicky, of the situation. For more than 2 decades, Putin has ruthlessly crushed what you might call the liberal opposition. He's jailed people like Alexei Navalny, the opposition leader who challenged him. He has effectively made about 1 million Russians flee since his full-scale invasion last year, people who are unhappy with the progress of the war. But actually, the greatest threat to his regime is from the ultra-nationalist right, from these patriots, as you call them, people who think the war in Ukraine should be prosecuted more brutally, more vigorously. Now, I'm talking to you from Kiev. I've spent the last year and a half here. The war is extremely brutal indeed. There's a 600-mile front line. Ukrainian civilians are killed every day. You can hear the boom from explosions and artillery and so on whenever you get anywhere near it. You have Kiev being hit every night by hypersonic missiles. But these patriots want more. They want more resources. They want more aggression. They want more mobilized soldiers. And they've turned out to be a great danger for Vladimir Putin. It's almost as if he's created this monster, this sort of super nationalist monster, and the monster is now trying to eat him. So we have to see, but the bottom line is the war is not going well for Putin. He wanted to take the whole country, to seize Kiev. That's been a failure. And what we're seeing now on the ground, really in the last 24 hours, is Ukraine doing a big kind of counteroffensive and trying to win back territory. And I think momentum is now with Ukraine because Russia is looking increasingly weak and divided.
Yes, but Putin, of course, might feel he has to feed that monster. So that might end up manifesting itself in a even more brutal conflict, an even bloodier war. It's about you, though, Ian and Reading. It's about Paul and Gosport. Hello, Paul. What would you like to say?
Oh, hello, Nicky. Well, good morning. The previous person that was talking has pretty much said what I want to say. I think this is a textbook reaction on the part of any dictator, and that is that any potential challenge to his authority he will get rid of. And as I said to one of your colleagues, the thought that occurred to me after this sort of debacle, less than 24 hours, was that of the contest between Ernst Röhm and Adolf Hitler. And of course, Hitler led Ernst Röhm up the path. And
the brown shirts, yeah?
The brown shirts, yes. 4 million of them, wiped them out, integrated them into the German army, and that was the end of Ernst Röhm. And frankly, I think that's what's happened to, I can't say his name, but the leader of the Wagner army. Now, what correspondents, I've been watching it and listening to all the reporters and everything and all the rest of it, but what they are underestimating is the Vladimir Putin's intentions, and he won't give up until he gets Ukraine totally, and he's prepared to do anything, and that is wipe out along the way anybody else. And,
okay, well, you make a point about the patterns of history, and just before, and it's an excellent one, and just before we lose Anthony, who has to go in just a moment, Anthony Beder, esteemed historian. Anthony, you'll know this, a point well made there by Paul, the patterns of history. We see the patterns of history because the patterns of history are a manifestation of the dark aspects of the human condition. We've seen it before, haven't we, Anthony?
Well, we've seen certain things before, and when one talks about the repetition and all the rest of it, one has to be very, very careful because we all too often try to think that we can predict the future by what's happened in the past. I mean, yes, there are some sort of striking parallels, and it's an interesting point about comparing Prigozhin to the SA and the brown shirts and all the rest of it. But we can certainly learn from the past, but we've got to be very careful to realize that it's not actually going to tell us how the future is going to work out. And certainly in Russia at the moment, and with the Ukraine war, we are in a position where it's almost impossible to see how consequences are going to work out. It's a little bit like a pinball machine. The ball bounces off in totally unexpected directions, and we cannot see really or work out, in fact, what the end result is going to be. There's a certain menu one can come up with of different possibilities, but at the same time, one's going to be very, very careful of assuming that we can actually work it out. We always get it wrong, and above all, we always get dictator syndrome wrong. We fail to understand exactly how the mind of a dictator works because they don't often work according to their own self-interest. This is the problem. We got it wrong about Hitler. We got it wrong about Putin even invading Ukraine and wanting to have another war in Europe on the Eurasian landmass. So I think we've got to be fairly careful about looking forwards, but just be ready for almost anything that could come out of this.
Fascinating. You are welcome anytime, Anthony. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Sarah Rainsford, BBC's Eastern European correspondent, currently in Warsaw, ex-Moscow correspondent before being unceremoniously thrown out in 2021. Sarah, what do you make of the ostensible appearance of Shoigu, the defense minister, on the front line in Ukraine this morning on Russian television? Old footage perchance, but what do you make of the fact that they are showing it?
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, isn't it? The fact that those pictures are being shown and that they're being shown right now. I think definitely we can ask questions about when those pictures were filmed. There are reports that Mr. Shoigu was down in southern Russia at the end of last week, so before this huge crisis began to play out. But still, you know, the pictures were filmed, he was there, it was held on the shelf, and now when there are questions, big questions about his future and whether he was to be the sort of sacrificial goat at the altar of Putin's survival and stability of his system, the answer seems to be no, that Putin's standing by his man. Sergei Shoigu is a man that Putin is a personal friend of and has been for many, many years. He's been his defense minister for a very, very long time. These are two men who kind of go on holiday together. I remember many years that I was in Russia, every summer you'd see pictures of Shoigu and Putin, you know, bare-chested, wading through rivers, fishing, diving, and also in kind of forest holidays together, hiking. So that, you know, their bromance, if you like, was always a big thing. And now suddenly he was the man that Yevgeny Prigozhin was mounting an armed insurrection to demand his removal. And it looks like for now, the fact that this video is now being produced to show that he's still in his job, it looks like Putin is standing by his man, at least for now.
So that's his holiday companion, his bromance. What about Putin's chef, Prigozhin? Tell us a little bit more about this man. He's an award winner, I read. He won the Hero of the Russian Federation in 2022. And here's another award he won, the Corrupt Person of the Year by the Organised Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, also in 2022. I wouldn't imagine both are on his shelves. And he was a restaurateur, wasn't he? Tell us more.
Yeah, he is a former convict in the crazy, tumultuous criminal days of the 1990s in St. Petersburg. He went to prison for a violent crime. He got out after some years and he became a hot dog salesman in St. Petersburg, right at the time that Vladimir Putin was the deputy mayor there. He was in a position of authority in St. Petersburg, and the two men crossed paths at some point. Eventually, Prigozhin became a restaurateur, a very fancy restaurateur, no longer selling hot dogs, and he became one of the chefs, the trusted chefs of the Kremlin and of Vladimir Putin. And so they had this pretty close relationship. And eventually it kind of evolved into a position and a role whereby Yevgeny Prigozhin was really doing a lot of the Kremlin's dirty work for it. And that was from real war, so sending mercenaries into Syria to fight in Syria, also to Africa, mercenaries there, but also the hybrid war. You know, Yevgeny Prigozhin has been linked to many things, including attempts to destabilize Western democracies, the use of disinformation, a giant troll farm, again in St. Petersburg, which has been linked to attempts to meddle with the American election. So he is and has been a really important figure, very close to Putin and to the Russian state. And he is the worm that has turned. And that is why this is so significant. And that's why, you know, all these questions are now being asked about Vladimir Putin's reputation, his image, but also his judgment. Why did he not step in when this feud between Prigozhin and the Defense Ministry became so obvious, so vicious, and so plain for everyone to see? Why did he let it get to a point where Prigozhin, Putin's man, essentially had turned against the Russian state and was marching with his men on Moscow? So really, really extraordinary things happening this weekend that it's hard to overestimate.
George Orwell's statue is outside the BBC where I am here in London, and just to change the punchline a bit, isn't it a case of our enemy's enemy is our enemy?
Well, I wouldn't say Prigozhin would be our friend, that's for sure. You know, even if Yevgeny Prigozhin had intended to actually challenge Putin for power, and that is not what he was doing. He was marching against the Defense Ministry initially, but that became a challenge to Putin's authority by its very nature. It's impossible to turn against the Defense Ministry and not affect Putin and the Kremlin, of course. You know, even if he had succeeded, there is no way that a former convict, a brutal man responsible for people who are killing and committing war crimes in Ukraine could ever be any friend of normal democratic countries. No way. And also, there's a question in all of this that is still kind of bugging me somewhere at the back of my mind, is that one of the messages that comes out of this is be careful what you wish for in Russia. We've been saying for years that the move away from Putin's Russia would not be to a democratic and free and liberal Russia. It was never going to be a Russia run by someone like the murdered opposition politician Boris Nemtsov. That was never going to happen. It was the dream perhaps of some people within inside Russia of another Russia, a democratic one, but it wasn't the likely scenario. The question is, was Prigozhin the beast that was supposed to show the West what the alternative might be? So much worse, of course, than Vladimir Putin.
And how weakened is Putin?
Well, I think he's going to do his best to put on a really big show of strength now. That's what he has to do, obviously. And I think the video of Shoigu down with the commanders in the south of Russia operating leading the forces in Ukraine, that was part of that kind of Operation Rescue My Reputation. It was all about showing unity, showing that the war against Ukraine is an existential fight for Russia that Putin will continue to wage, even though Prigozhin has made so much criticism of the way it's being waged. So I think he will come back and he will say, Russia's under attack, unite behind me, I am your man. But he is dented by this. His authority has been challenged in a very odd way. And I think the interesting thing is that when you look at the commentary, you could accuse Western commentators of jumping on this and sort of hoping that it means a lot more than it actually does. But it's also people within Russia who have been close to the Kremlin, sympathetic to it, certainly not anti-Kremlin voices, who are now asking questions and expressing doubts and worrying about the fragility of a regime that they have been supporting and that they thought was strong, that they thought represented stability and order and Russian strength and might on the world stage. Now they are too, I think, asking some difficult questions. And I think ordinary Russians, the people in the street, will also have been pretty gobsmacked by what's happened over the past couple of days. The fact that Prigozhin was allowed to mount this challenge in itself is a weakening of Putin's authority.
Okay, and of course, Alexei Navalny, the main opposition leader, is still behind bars and will be for some time as well. Going to grab on with Luke in just a second. Luke, thanks for hanging on in there. But just let me ask you, Sarah, what is Prigozhin's main problem with the way the war has been waged? How would he like it to be different?
Well, there are lots of things. So I think Luke was touching on it there. He wants it to be bigger and better, and he wants Russia to win. He thinks that the commanders under Shoigu are failing. He has been throwing men at this war for months, and he has been complaining that he's not been getting proper support for that. Remember the beginning of this war, hundreds of thousands of Russian men fled the country. They didn't want to fight and die for Putin, however pro-Putin they might have been, some of them, before this war. When it came to sort of the opportunity of laying their lives on the line for Putin, they weren't interested. So Prigozhin stepped in and he went around the prisons. He began recruiting convicts and promising them freedom and an amnesty if they survived the fight. So they had a motive to fight this fight.